Let's look at Chapter 3, Example 7 from the textbook, Summarizing Quantitative Data. This is sugar and cereals. So the histogram displays the sugar content as a percent of weight of 49 brands of breakfast cereals. Well, I'm going to examine this histogram closely, and first I'm going to look at the x-axis, which shows me it is the sugar content in percentage, and my y-axis is the number of cereals, so this is a count. So the count will tell me that the height of each bin is going to tell me how much are in each bin. So this, for example, the first one has 6 types of cereals, and the second bin has a height up to 8, and the third bin 4, and the fourth bin looks like about 5, and then the next bin is 3, and then 3, and then there's a gap here, and 1, 1, 1, and the next one is 3 again. This looks like 7, 3, 3, and 1. So when you add up all these counts, we should get 49 brands of cereals. Also, you should examine the width of each bin. So each bin is approximately, has a range, the first one between 0 and 4, and then 4 to 8. So it's the bin width is 4. This would be 12 right here. All right, so the first question is asked you to describe the distribution. Well, anytime you want to describe the distribution, you always want to talk about the shape, if there are any outliers, the center, and the spread. So one way to remember this is to remember the acronym SOX. Hopefully you can see that. Let me write over that. So again, so shape, outliers, center, spread. Looking at the shape, we could see that it is bimodal. So bimodal means it has 2 modes or 2 peaks. So we could see there's a peak somewhere around 8, and then there is a peak somewhere around 44, 45. So this is called bimodal. So let me write shape is bimodal. And because it's bimodal, we could see that the lower cluster right here appears to be skewed right. So the lower cluster here. And then the upper cluster seems to be approximately symmetric. So lower cluster seems skewed right, and upper cluster approximately symmetric. There doesn't appear to be any outliers, and because we're talking about bimodal, usually what that means is we have 2 different types of groups. So in this case, when we look at the lower cluster, it seems to be centered somewhere around 10, and the second cluster appears to be centered around somewhere here, about 45%. So the first cluster centered around 10%, second cluster centered around 45%. So looking at the shape again, we can see that it is bimodal, non-symmetric, and the lower cluster is a bit skewed to the right, and the upper cluster is approximately symmetric. Outliers, there appear to be no outliers. The lower cluster is centered at about 10% sugar content, and the upper cluster is approximately centered at 45% sugar content. For the spread, the lower cluster is between 0% and 24%, while the upper cluster is between 28 and 64%. Looking at the last question, what do you think might account for this shape? Well, anytime we have a bimodal shape, it means there are two different groups. So probably we're looking at two different groups of cereals. So one cereal could be adult cereals, which probably have less sugar. I don't know, maybe Cheerios, and then we have the kids cereals, which tend to be more sugary.